880 The Biz, 880 AM, internationally syndicated through iHeartRadio and nationally syndicated. And as always, we bring you from the canvas to the red carpet, all the happenings and all the movers and shakers in Miami. And this is going to be a wonderful show. I'm super excited. I was doing At Home with Art at the Home and Design Show, which was, by the way, fabulous. I hope I saw some fans out in the show. And just to recap it, we did 22 artists, 7 art districts from North Miami to the Fontainebleau area to Miami Beach, the South Florida Art Center, Wynwood. We did Coral Gables, and we did the Bird Road Arts District. A big shout out to all my artists that were there. They were fabulous, and we were able to do 4 days. There was a lot of connections between interior designers and the artists, and it was a phenomenal show. And so we look forward to September when we're invited again to represent and empower the arts. On the opening night of Friday evening, I had the pleasure to meet a man who was very tall, with a very long hair, platinum hair, and really a distinguished fellow who would really stand out of a crowd of a million. He would definitely be a standout, for sure. And as I walk over, somebody whispers to my ear, "Do you know who that is?" And it was the soul of Miami, James Eccles, who's always in every single event with his wife, Annette. And I said, "No, I don't know, but he definitely stands out." And he goes, "Well, that's the last standing cowboy." I said, "What do you mean last standing cowboy?" He goes, "Cocaine Cowboys." And I go, "You're kidding me." I said, is he the pilot?" And he goes, "That's right." And well, believe me, my fans, I ran up to him, introduced myself, and I said, "I would love, if you had the moment, to come over to the studio and talk about your wonderful stories and adventures and everything that was documented in 2006. And with that, my fans, I introduce you to Mickey Munday. Good evening, Mickey.
Hello. I mean, all of that hot air you just put out on me, I don't know.
Well, it's the truth. I mean, I don't know, but you must hear it. I mean, you're a very tall man. You have better hair than most women. I mean, it's very long, and it's a lot. Coming from me, that I could barely grow 3 inches in a year, and so it's interesting. And to see that, I am a huge fan. I've seen the movie several times, and I know that it's become a cult movie. I mean, people love it. They see it. People from all over the world have been introduced, and you know, Mickey, I do my real bread and butter. I don't know if you know this, is I'm a curator, a historian and a curator, and I do tours in Miami. Been doing it since 2009. And you are part of my tour every single day. I mentioned the 5 things. Are you the one peeking
in my window?
I do 5 things, the 5 things that changed Miami, the things that put Miami on the map, from Julia Tuttle's vision in the mid-19th century, all the way to Morris Latipus and his architecture and the ice boxes in the sky, meaning AC being invented with the Fontainebleau, all the way to Miami Vice recording and the Cocaine Cowboys era of the 75 to 85, the decade where Miami became a ghost town. And basically your whole documentary really outlines that decade of Miami. And so with that said, tell us a little bit about, now you're native from Miami, born and conceived. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
I like the way I told you that, and you added that. Nice of you. Yes, I got lucky the night my mother and father moved to Miami.
You got conceived.
That's the night I was conceived. And they moved here. Miami at that time was a war town, so you as a historian should know it. My parents moved down here. Took almost a week to drive here at that time in a car with everything they had in the car. And it wasn't that my father didn't have money, he had money, but they could only find a room for one night. So it's 5 nights, 6 nights sleeping in the car. One night here, I guess there was a little alcohol, and here I am. And it took another 5 nights before they actually found a place to live.
Wow.
So that's how my mother used to come by and tap me on the shoulder on September 29th and go, "Happy birthday." And I go, "Mom, my birthday was 3 months ago." I never put the math together the other way, the 9 months the other way. One day I kind of realized what this was, and nobody likes to think about what your parents are doing. So.
Now tell me, what school did you go to? Where did you reside in Miami?
First we lived at, I think they call it Design Place now. It's on 54th Street and Northeast 2nd Avenue. At that time it was called Sable Palm Apartments.
Yeah.
And I went to Chatelawn Elementary, and my father had a concrete block company, and it was in construction, and he built a house. Took him 2 years to do it. He was wheeling and dealing, you know, how you could wheel and deal. He'd say, "You do this for me and I do that for you," as far as construction. And it took 2 years, and he built a house up in North Miami, and at the time it was in the middle of a swamp. And when I tell that to people, they kind of look at me strange because it's right in the middle of town. So on a canal, an acre of land. That's also, he bought like 3 acres, and by the time he sold it all off, he ended up with his lot for free. That's how he wheeled and dealed what he was doing. So I went to school in North Miami. I went to William Jennings Bryan, then to Gratney Elementary, then to North Miami Junior, North Miami Senior, and then I went to, its names changed half a dozen times. I went to Dade Junior College.
Dade Junior College. Now that's
they
one
call
I
it Miami-Dade. Or
Miami-Dade College,
and,
the biggest university college now in the country.
I called it Opelika U back then. What it was an old World War II naval air station. It was called Masters Field, and they changed the barracks, turned the barracks until they were actually got the school itself built. I went to school in barracks, converted barracks. In fact, the gymnasium that's there at the North Campus, that's the Dade North Campus, is, if you look at it, you'll see that it's a rebuilt hangar.
Right.
So
and it's, now, I wanted to ask you, when you were in Miami-Dade, or as you say, Opelika U, what were you considering, I mean, to see what has transpired in your life as being the biggest drug smuggler, the biggest smuggler in the history, a pioneer, and the whole story being told in a documentary that came out in 2006, which really has put you in a celebrity status as people see that movie unfold, and the stories and that whole era that you created, really. Way before Miami Vice, there was Mickey Munday. So tell me, when you were in Opelika U, where were your life going? What were you seeing that you wanted to do? Now, I know you're in construction and you've done a lot of this stuff, but just to see what your mind was when you were in high school going into college.
My father, like I said, had a concrete block company in construction, so that's really got me curious about how everything worked, and we ended up doing a lot of machine work, so I got involved in that. I got my certificate as a welder at age 16, and I became really, really interested in high-performance cars, and then motorcycles, and eventually into boats too. But if it moved, I tried to race it. And you might say that going back to even when I was in high school, I lettered 3 years in track and 3 years in cross country. I always liked to go fast. So I didn't see myself when I was in college as becoming a smuggler. And in fact, I like to tell people now, I don't drink, I don't smoke, and I've never even tried drugs. I used to drink a little, and one day I just said, I don't really need it.
Well,
I like to go to bars, though.
I think that's a secret to your success also. I mean, to be in the last standing cocaine cowboy, also to be the smarts that you were in so many situations that you were able to walk away from. I think that versus some of your other partners or people that you worked with that did use, like Max and that really weren't thinking straight, and so that's like something like a major rule that I think makes a success if you're going to be in that particular environment.
I never understood the mentality of the violence, but the way I looked at it, I didn't buy it, I didn't sell it, I didn't use it, I didn't steal it, I didn't cheat anybody. All I did was make a lot of money for people, so that's the reason why other than people saying, well, what you brought back was, evil, I understand their point of view, but as far as in the business, I didn't try to hurt anybody, and I never understood, like, again, I'll say the violence, and I tried to stop a lot of it. I'm going, why? Why are you spending all this time to try to cheat or steal from somebody when with the same amount of effort we could go out and make literally $1 million in 1980 money?
So from 70, okay, so for anyone listening in, we have Mickey Munday on Art Talk with Susana Baker, and this is one of the last standing cocaine cowboys. There's a fabulous documentary. I suggest everybody to see it. It's an amazing story that really unveils that whole decade in Miami of the drug trafficking from South America and from the Caribbean islands, and really masterminded with when you look at it, you cannot help to admire the process and the whole organization that you had behind it. I mean, it was, really masterminded from the beginning, as small as just making sure the shocks of a car, thinking, oh, if we had 100 pounds in the back of the trunk, and a police car sees the Lincoln dragging, and you were thinking all these, every little bit. It's like you sat there and you dissected every scene and what could happen and where it would go from there. When did you start you about? How were you approached? For people who might not have seen the movie, talk us and walk us into how you went from Opalaka you into becoming the amazing story that you are.
I looked at it, you might say, like it's military. Know the enemy, know the competition. So, and don't let them know you. So you have to keep a low profile that you can be right in their face and they not see you. So, and why do you want to make somebody, like you were saying, the car overloaded and dragging on the ground? Well, it's something so simple to fix. Set of load leveler shocks or airbags, and you spend less than $100, and nobody looks at you, and you drive an old family car. And people say, well, they might smell it. I'm going to tell you, if you put a baby seat in the back with a used diaper back there, nobody's going to smell anything. And all it takes is just what I thought was common sense. The other thing I did is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and I used voice-activated tape recorders. I listened to almost every radio station that belonged to the government that would be what I would call competition, like the U.S. Customs Service, the U.S. Coast Guard, the DEA, and I took the time to go by where their office was, so you would see what kind of vehicles they were using, and you would study them. That's exactly what they would do to me. If they knew about me, they would study me.
And so you reversed it and studied them.
Studied them, and I spent money. A lot of the people that I like to, how hard or how expensive it is to get a Radio Shack scanner. I believe it was $65. Now, that's not very much money when you see people going to the clubs and buying $100 bottles of champagne. And I'm going, and once you do the champagne, you don't get it again. The scanner stays,
Right.
It doesn't wear out. And then they go, well, where did you get the radio frequencies? Well, that really did cost a lot of money, because there was a book that has every license, radio license, because everybody who has a radio, this one included, has to be licensed. Every frequency through the entire spectrum is licensed, and it'll tell you where it is. So if you want to know the local DEA, you look it up in the book. And that book was really expensive. It was $5.
Oh.
So today you could probably get it for free online. My point being, these people wouldn't even spend $70 plus tax. And you go, why? And yes, it would be a pain if you sat there and listened, so I bought a voice-activated tape recorder so that when something came over the radio, it would turn on the tape recorder, because sometimes there would be hours of nothing but dead air.
Right.
And then you would just go through it and see if it would be anything interesting, and you would hear them doing things to other people, and you would learn from other people's mistakes. Not to saying that I didn't make mistakes, I did. But if I did, I only did it once.
Now that you mention that, what mistake would you say is one of the mistakes you made that you wish, if you had the opportunity to go back, you wouldn't have made that mistake?
Well, I mean, there could be a whole litany of ones there. I mean, meeting Max could have that would have been a good one. There were a few women back then too that probably wouldn't have. I would have changed that too. But
meeting Max. How did you meet Max? Let's go right to the nitty gritty. Max comes into your life. Where did you meet Max?
I had been in with my friends and associates in the pot smuggling business, and it got to the point where there's so much pot here in Dade County that you couldn't give it away. Literally, you couldn't give it away. I mean, people had tons of it, and it got to be so cheap it wasn't worth to go get. So I looked around. I said, well, I see where the people that were importing the cocaine, they were making really, really good money, and all they were doing was I was going to Jamaica, which is like 900 miles, and Colombia is like 1,200 miles, so another 300 miles is nothing. I looked at it, and so I put out a few feelers to people that I knew, and I ended up through a radio, a guy who did radio repair work for airplanes. One of his clients had died in an airplane crash, and he said that the people that he worked for were looking for somebody. So I already knew the guy in the radio business, so I knew he was not somebody working for the government. So I said I would sit down and meet with him. But before I did, I went and bought a really, really good tape recorder. And I went to all kinds of venues around Dade County looking for a place where I could put the tape recorder on the table and you and I have a conversation, and the tape recorder would not be able to cover it. And I tried like clubs and things like that, but the absolute best place is a bowling alley, because you're right next to the pinball machine going ding, 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 ding. And your sound person will probably be upset when I do this, but if I start talking like this, you across the room can hear me, but the tape recorder can't. Mm-hmm. So if you do that, and if I thought of anything that I really wanted to say, like a number or something like that, I wrote it on a napkin, and I had a Coke. It was, a cup of Coke, mm-hmm. and I would show it to them and stick it in the Coke so it dissolves. Smart. And unbeknown to them, when I said I would meet them, it was at the bowling alley. They didn't realize that 3 or 4 of the people that were also there worked for me. They didn't associate with it. One of them was playing pinball. They would see what you look like, mm-hmm. and then when you left, they followed you home. Or to your business to make sure you didn't go back to the U.S. Customs headquarters or the DEA headquarters or the FBI. And then we sat on you for 2 or 3 days.
Before you continue the next.
So then before I would meet them again and say, okay, I know they're real. The only thing I thought was disappointing is they were so flagrant about what they were doing. And when I sat on them, I realized I knew these people were real. I'm not being set up in a sting or something like that. And I also realized I'm going to have to be very, very careful around them. I can't show up at their house. I don't want, because sooner or later somebody else is going to start watching them.
Yeah.
So I had to back off from them a little bit, but I did business with them, and I also tried to, you might say, educate them as to some of the things they were doing. And it worked. It worked really well. Now,
is that where you met Max?
That's where I met Max. Max was he worked for Rafael Salacia Cordona. He was the American guy here. Rafa was the same as Pablo, same rank as Pablo. Pablo was down south, Rafa was up here.
Pablo Escobar.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Rafa was as scary as Pablo, but he wasn't like, hey, look at me, look at me, look at me. Although he did live in Golden Beach or places like that, but he wasn't like trying to tell everybody and let the whole world knew what he was doing. He just looked like a wealthy Colombian guy.
But trying to fly under the radar.
Yeah, he kept a pretty good profile. But he was scary. And
now, you were making, at one point, I think one of your last runs was $2.5 million, but averaging close to $1 million per run.
It sounds like you've really done your homework. Yes, I was getting paid $5,000 a kilo. And the last couple of trips I came in, I would bring 500 at a time. So you would gross $2.5 million. That's a lot of money in today's money, but you got to remember that would be in 1986 money, so it would be almost double
Yeah.
What today's money would be.
Well, actually, in 75 to 85, it got to a point where Miami's banks had more money than the Federal Reserve, over $5 billion. I mean, duffel bag suitcases, the same bank on Brickell Avenue that would make $6 million a year in deposits were making $60 million. So it was a whole nother era in Miami. It was definitely, the cocaine cowboys really, set a whole tone in Miami, and it all became, all of Brickell Avenue started to get built.
That's the trickle-down effect. The cocaine money didn't build the building, but you would buy something, and that person, a legitimate person, would buy something for jewelry for the wife or the car, or they put an addition on the house, or because there was so much business being done here, the money stayed here. And you were talking about the money. When the Colombians that I was doing business with finally got smart, because they lost a lot of money in stings when they're trying to launder the money here, and then they finally, after me convincing them to, because I go south with an empty plane, to give me the money and to take it to, because they own the bank in Colombia, so I would take the cash to Colombia. Sometimes I would take up to $25 million on a trip down.
To Colombia.
In cash, but I would, unbeknown to them, I would take it out of every little bag or something, because it could belong to 5 or 6 different people. I would fluff it all up, throw it out on the hangar floor, and I would mix cocaine and alcohol, and I would spray all the money so that all the money would test positive for cocaine, so that when the money eventually comes back here, everybody's pocket will test positive, so the judge, the attorney, the doctor, your friends, it would drive a drug dog just absolutely crazy. I thought it was fun to do too. So.
It looks that way, because I was reading a little bit, and it was, you're just such an intelligent man, really, even though you say it's common sense. But sometimes common sense is intelligence. A lot of people are always running from A to Z, and they just don't sit back and just look at how simple or how easy it's, or, it's like a kinetic piece of art. You look at a kinetic piece of art and it just moves, and it changes composition 10 times over by swaying a few degrees this way. And then when you go, and it's like, wow, you feel like you just drank 6 margaritas looking at this piece of work. Then you go in front of it and you look real close, and it's just made with like push pins and math, and sort of like the common sense. It's the same way. People are always thinking of big stories and elaborate schemes, and at the end of the day is a simple common sense. Yeah. And that's what's so intelligent and admirable about you. Like, you used to go and actually spray cocaine onto the elevators. Is that something you did with the police dogs? So when they came...
Have you ever been to a restaurant and seen 5 or 6 police cars there because they're inside eating lunch? I would be driving down the street in my tow truck, and I'd go, oh, thank you. And I'd pull in, and I'd have a little bottle, said 409 on it or something like that, and I would pull in, and I would spray all the police cars. If it said canine on the side, I couldn't wait. I'd even spray where they train the dogs. I would take 2 or 3 dogs out there and spray everything to drive the dogs crazy when they're trying to train them. If somebody lived in a building, I'd be worried about them, so I would spray the elevator. The alcohol immediately evaporates and leaves. Nobody ever cleans the walls on a staircase, so.
And that's where the police dogs would go.
I used to go by the DEA. I would go jogging on the Doral Golf Course. That's where the DEA is out right there at Koger Executive Center. And I would have water balloons filled with cocaine and alcohol, or just cocaine and water, and I would throw it over their fence, and especially on their one that they had, the canine car. And because when the balloon breaks, you can't even see it. It's just a little piece of plastic. Nobody would think anything of it. And I would bomb the parking lot from the backside from the golf course, and I would just be another jogger out there on the fun. And it was more, it was a hoot to do. Really, I don't know if it ever helped me, but it was just a whole lot of fun to do this.
It seems like it was a stress releaser.
I mean, when I towed the Coast Guard in with a boat that had 380 kilos of coke on it, it was really hard to keep them smiling the entire time.
Now, that was an interesting... Now, you actually... they stopped you, and you had 380 kilos on the boat,
Yeah.
and you weren't arrested.
Well,
They
were
actually left.
They were well hidden. They didn't leave. They didn't leave very far because their motor blew up. That's why I ended up towing them in.
You towed them in with 380 kilos
Yeah, they
of
tied
cocaine.
their little boat to the back of mine, got on my boat, and I drove them into the dock at Hollover at the gas dock there. Just as you come around and go north up to Hollover.
Talk about stories.
But, I mean, my boat was... Because it was a boat I built in my own boat factory, so I was very confident in my equipment, and I always like to tell people that in the boating industry or fishing or it's a guy thing, we tend to lie about the size of things. Wink, wink. Okay. So if you build like a 25-foot boat, you might call it a 26 or a 27, or if it's a 23, you call it a 25, or you usually make them bigger than what they are. And everybody in the marine industry knows this. So if you saw in letters that were like 1 foot high and like 3 feet long, it said ultimate 23, you would think it was a 23 or less, when actually the boat I built was a 25. And the motor on the back was a 235 horsepower Johnson. It's physically the same size as the 150. Now the 235 would look good back there, but it wouldn't look like it was too big. But I put the cowlings off of a 150, which is the same exact size motor, on it. So now I got a 23-foot boat with 150 horsepower, and I built the entire boat, out of Kevlar, which is incredibly strong, but the big reason I did it was because it's incredibly light. So when the boat's loaded, it isn't real deep in the water. And everything on my boat matched. The poles matched the boat, the life preserver I was wearing matched the boat. And to get on your boat, they usually use an excuse for a safety inspection, and the first thing they ask for is a life preserver. Well, I'm wearing it. Like the really nice ones, like a jet ski wears, so it doesn't look hokey. One of the tricks is you have to have an anchor with 200 feet of rope. Well, it's mounted on the bow of the boat with a whole lot of rope that you're pretty sure that it was 200, it was actually 220. You're supposed to have a fire extinguisher for every motor. Well, I had 4. One on each side of the motor that you can see. You're supposed to have a flare. I had 2. And when they ask for your ID, I would hand them what they call a 6-pack license, which means I can take 6 paying customers out. So that means I'm a for real captain, and I outrank them. So when they ask for your ID, you're not handing your driver's license. You're handing a for real marine license, which means you're not some weekend wonder out there bumbling around. And of course, you be very, very polite to them. And when they pull up, they go, "Hey, how's it going? Fishing? Yes. What's the problem?" And you don't eat. "How's everything? Would you like something to drink?" And when you say that to them, you have to real quick add, I don't drink myself. I don't have any beer to offer you, but I do have Gatorade or sodas if you want some. So right off the bat, I've told them I'm not drinking.
Right.
So
you had it down.
Everything they want to do, and the boat's an open fish boat, so you can see everything. The hatch is open in the front, and the console door is open, so you can see inside. So they just take one look. It's a little boat. What did you possibly do with that little boat? They didn't realize that little boat had just gone 600 miles. They brought back 380 keys of coke.
And I have to tell you, so now you have everything systematic, organized, everything is programmed and going according. And so we're going to come back, because I want you to come back and tell me about the day when you met Giselle Blanco, the godmother of cocaine. And so we have Mickey Munday, Cocaine Cowboys, the last standing Cocaine Cowboys with Susana Baker and ARTTALK. We're going to come right back after these commercial breaks.